Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits video. Alright, another entry here based on one of your suggestions. In this case, it was a more recent suggestion just done around late last year or so. This one has to do with an interesting entry because it's almost mimicking various versions of other headless horsemen across the world. So it makes it seem like there's one portion of a story, like one version of this headless horseman in one part of the world, and then there's yet another one in other parts of the world as well. So interesting stuff associated with this creature. Even in some cases, one surefire way to make sure that it does not quote unquote get you, because its whole mission is it's the harbinger of death. So essentially, when you meet it or it says your name, then you're going to be doomed to die sometime soon. But it has to do with this entity, the spirit known as the Dullahan, what you're looking at a picture of here. Absolutely just iconic looking immediately. Anytime you have a powerful, in this case, a rider on a horse who happens to be headless, then absolutely it just creates an instant image, powerful image that sticks to you, especially with regards to the characteristics tied to this Dullahan. I mean, there's a lot of things that almost read like something out of a Tales from the Crypt type story, but no, this is all pretty much true. This is stuff that has gone down for several centuries there in Ireland, to be specific. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the information tied to this Dullahan. So what is it essentially? Well, it's a creature slash ghost slash spirit of some kind that has been around for so long within Ireland, especially in certain counties named Sligo and Down, that it's become part of their folklore. So much so that to this very day, on certain parts of the year, people still practice a little bit of a ritual to ensure that they in turn do not meet this Dullahan. Like, they actually consider it almost like a tradition, an annual thing that you have to make sure you're not within its eyesight or within its path, to make certain that you don't have any doom facing you thereafter. I mean, that's how real sometimes that these people there sometimes take this Dullahan. All it is essentially, it's a wild black-robed horseman of some kind riding a very large dark horse slash steed that rides across the countryside. It always riding. It has one purpose only: to ride from point A to point B, and once it gets to point B and it stops, that's when the second part of its mission comes into play. I'll talk about that here in a minute. As far as how it looks like, of course, the most distinctive portion of this rider is the fact that it is completely headless. Not necessarily without a head per se, it's just that it's not resting on its shoulders. Rather, it has its head either carried on the side, like let's say upright in its hand, or within some kind of noose or something tied to its saddle. Either way, though, this head is always off of its neck, so it's not ever on its shoulders. Instead, it's on the aforementioned two areas there. That's already, a sight like this, that's already going to be quite fearful to see. But here's some more facts to make it even more scary to look at. Its head, whenever it is visibly seen, seems to have this color and texture almost like a moldy cheese. So it almost looks rotten. Like, if you could imagine, just take a slice of cheese or a block of cheese and then leave it out for a few days outside, and then you'll be able to get an idea essentially of how this head looks like. Even more frightening is the fact that it always has this almost hideous, Joker-like, idiotic grin that's always there from ear to ear. So it never says it never changes its expression with regards to that evil smile that it has. It does have eyes, but these eyes are considered small and black, and they're always darting back and forth, always looking for something, because it's on a mission, which again I'll highlight here in just one quick minute. And on top of that, these eyes are very powerful. These eyes, whenever this thing holds its head up straight into the sky, it can peer across vast distances far beyond the countryside. Even when things apparently are in its way, it can peer beyond them and then find its destination as it goes from point A to point B. Also, its head seems to have a phosphorus glow to it. Whatever it's made of, whatever the decaying matter is, it can glow so brightly that even in the dead of night, this thing, this Dullahan, can use it as a lamp. So very, very, very fascinating on that part. You can definitely see it coming from a long part away from the countryside. If you see this glow, obviously, like in the distance, darting from point A, like in this case from the distance from one point to another point, and it doesn't look like anything like you would normally presume to have glow, like let's say a man just walking around with a lantern or car lights or anything along those lines. No, if it looks like it's something that's on a horse that's traveling at a very quick speed and it's from a distance, then you'll know that you're dealing with this Dullahan. But yes, these are some of the most some of the most eerie characteristics associated with this creature. I was mentioning that it has one purpose, and the reason is this: it is indeed the harbinger of doom. Its whole purpose is when people see it riding somewhere, they know that it's riding to find someone that's about to die soon. And the reason for that is because once it finds that destination and it finds that person, it'll do everything it can to get to that area. And then once it does so, then it reaches that destination and it only utters one word at that point. All it is just basically the name of the person that is going to die. That's why in some cases people, when they see this thing from a distance, they in turn lock themselves in their home and they cover their ears as much as they can, because their mindset is, if they don't see this creature, if they don't acknowledge it, and they don't hear their names being called by this thing, then they in turn won't be the person, the receiving end of this doom, this quote-unquote doom from this creature. Now, in some cases, it's not necessarily seen as being outright evil, like it doesn't cause the death of a person. Instead, all it is, it's almost like the Grim Reaper pointing to someone and indicating that that person is soon to die. Not because it's causing their death, but just because it's pointing out that simple fact. But of course, people, whenever they see this thing and they know that it's something involving someone dying soon, they don't want to be part of that. So that's why they try to do everything they can. There's another variation of this Dullahan. Sometimes they are seen not on a horse but on a coach, being led by multiple horses. Same horses from before, in some cases up to 6 black horses. These horses, by the way, are also described as looking very powerful, very evil looking, not like your standard normal horse. No, in this case, looks like almost like something straight out of hell. But these coaches move so fast because of the power of these 6 black horses that the friction that it causes will often set the bushes that it's crossing on fire. Imagine that sight, almost like Ghost Rider. When it comes to seeing this thing moving about the countryside, all you see is a trail of fire behind it because of the power of the coaches involved. But yes, that's essentially what this creature does. It's seen on certain times of the year. It seems like there's a festival that happens. I'm trying to remember what this festival was called, but essentially it's held once a year, and whenever that festival occurs, then people seem to have let's say a notion to stay indoors, lock everything that they can, put everything like let's say curtains drawn, like closed, everything. It's an Irish festival of some kind, because it is said that if you see this thing and then it turns and sees you, not that you're going to die until it finds the person it's truly looking, but it is considered very bad ill fortune to look on this thing, because in some cases it'll either blind you under one eye or it'll reward you by throwing something towards your home, quote unquote reward, throwing something towards your home, which could be something like blood or something just ill-gotten, just something to make sure that it's his way of punishing people for looking at his direction outright. So again, that's why during these times of years, during this time of the year, I think it's around the end of August, early September, that's when people seem to make sure that they in turn lock themselves during the night, and because that's when this creature tends to come out, and make sure that they do not look in any direction whatsoever if they feel the presence of this Dullahan. Some first-hand accounts, by the way, happen to have been done with this creature. One of them was a guy named W.J. Fitzpatrick. He was a storyteller from some place called Mourne Mountains there in County Down. He stated that he was there stopping by some hill when he saw the Dullahan nearby just as the sun was setting, and sure enough, he spotted it. It was headless. It held its own head in its hand, and he heard it call out a name. Immediately, because this guy Fitzpatrick knew about the stories of the Dullahan, he made sure to cover his ears because he didn't want to have this name accidentally heard by him, and that in turn it signaled his doom. And he closed his eyes, and then when he opened it after a few moments later, this Dullahan was gone. And then he heard that someone else died shortly afterwards. It was a young man that was nearby that area that was killed, so he presumed it must have been that name. And then another encounter has to do with some guy, a nameless man, who's actually showcased one of the fears, probably the only fear that this Dullahan has. If you happen to have this with you as well, it's a good way to avert this Dullahan. He said that this man was on his way home one night from a place called Roundstone and then Bali Conneely, and it was stated that just as it was getting dark, he heard the sound, these very powerful sound of hooves coming behind him from the road. And so when he looked around, he saw that sure enough, there was this Dullahan. He recognized it for what it was. It was on a huge charge coming up straight towards him as quick as can be. And of course, panicking as much as he could, he started to run, knowing though that he wasn't going to outrun this thing, but still he tried to. But just by pure luck, he happened to have a gold-headed pin within one of the folds of his shirt. And just as this thing was about to overtake him, and no doubt probably claim his life or doom him at that point, that's when this gold-headed pin fell out of his shirt, and he heard a gigantic roar coming from the Dullahan, because apparently this thing, this spirit, this Dullahan, has a huge aversion to gold. So if you happen to have it with you nearby, and you're again in those places in Ireland there, in the counties of Sligo and another place called Down, and you happen to see this Dullahan, carry some gold with you, because if you throw it around your area or do something with it nearby, then it's supposed to make this Dullahan just disappear. Like the way that this guy described it, there was a roar in the air, and when he looked again, the Dullahan was gone. So that's probably the only way to make sure that this Dullahan no longer chases you thereafter. But that's it. That's pretty much all the info tied to this spirit. This is one of those that you don't want to meet anywhere, because it'll certainly mean someone's doom, maybe even your own. If anyone has any more information, please post those comments below. Anybody encounter people in the past, let's say, that have met this thing, or anybody knows stories related to it? Maybe they were the lucky ones that didn't happen to die that night, but instead knew of others that did. Please post those comments below. That'd be really great to hear. But sure enough, it does seem like it is one of the versions there of their headless horseman, or their grim reaper as well. So very interesting to note those similarities again between different countries. Alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.